Good afternoon. My name is Diana Waring, and I'm the director of the Interior Museum, and it's my pleasure to have you all here this afternoon for the latest installment of our monthly lecture series. As many of you know, these lectures encompass a wide range of topics: historical, environmental, scientific, to reflect the diverse workings of our bureaus at the Department of the Interior as a whole, past and present. A quick bit of housekeeping before we get started is that on your seats you'll all find a feedback form. We encourage you to fill these out and deposit them on the tray outside in conclusion of the lecture. Your input is really important and really helps us make this a well-rounded series and make it the best that it can be. In terms of lectures coming up, our October lecture is Boehm's Chief of Marine Minerals Division. He'll be speaking on the development of the National Offshore Sand Inventory. And in November, our own Chief Curator, Tracy Bates, will be presenting on American Indian and Alaskan Natives and how they've made a direct and lasting contribution to the appearance of the headquarters buildings. But turning to today's presentation, if you're like me, you've watched in fascination over the past year or so as the Lockkeeper's House, the National Mall's oldest extant structure, has undergone a magical transformation. It's a story that's literally not only intersected 17th Street and Constitution Avenue, but also is at the intersection of engineering and landscape architecture. Here to tell you about this extraordinary project is Yue Li. She holds master's degrees in urban planning and landscape architecture and has nearly 30 years of professional experience spanning the private practice, commercial firms, and most recently with the National Park Service as a senior landscape architect. Some of her major projects here with the National Park Service to date are involved with improvements to the Lincoln Memorial, George Mason Memorial, and the planned Eisenhower Memorial. Please join me in welcoming Yue Li.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I see a lot of gray and green uniforms and a lot of familiar faces. I really appreciate your interest to this project. Diana already introduced me. I guess I don't have to say much. For my background, I started in National Park Service 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, and Constitution Garden project is one of the projects that I was assigned to work on initially. I started in November of 2016, and this project, Lockkeeper House, started in December, just a month later. The project is really part of the larger Constitution Garden improvement. We call that Phase 1. It is in the key location. It costs a lot of time, money, and effort to build it. So far, actually, we know the total cost for the project is $6 million, and the hard cost for construction is $4.9 million. It takes almost 2 years. We started December, mobilized the contractor. Now we're talking about mid-September opening. So you can see it's like 21 months altogether to finish this project. So these two pictures were taken a few years ago. And although I think people in the room would be all recognized, on the right is the 56 Signers Island in the Constitution Lake, and on the left is the Lockkeeper House before we moved it. But those scenes are not very familiar for visitors who come from different cities of United States or international visitors. This place is not well known for outside visitors, and is kind of underutilized. So for a lot of people, actually, including myself, before working on this project, would ask why we want to take such a big effort to move a little house like this for 50 feet. It is the first building on the mall that currently is existing. If you see this timeline, upper left corner is the Capitol building when it's start moving in and built. In 1800, when the United States moved the capital city from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., there are two major buildings in the area. One is the Capitol, one is the White House. Those two buildings, actually, those are the original shape and look, and eventually they went through a lot of modifications and additions. Especially for the Capitol, it enlarged a lot and changed. And then the next will be this Lockkeeper House that was built 1837. Compare the time, the age of those buildings. The Washington Monument was done partially in 1848, and it finished, take another 40 years to finish. And the Smithsonian was built 1849. They're all later than the Lockkeeper House, and then the Capitol Dome was added in 1863. And all the other memorials and important buildings like Lincoln Memorial, Jefferson Memorial, they were all built in 20th century when we have those reclaimed land created. So as its name suggested, Lockkeeper House is for the lockkeeper's family to live in. The lockkeeper's task or duty was to open and close the waterway gate, record the trading, going through the boat, goods on the boats, and collect tolls. But then the question is, why is located here at the corner of 17th Street and Constitution Avenue? Here are some old maps. Is in 1850s. The map, actually, this map shows two canals already in this map. One was built 1818. Let me see if I got the date correct. One was built 1815. Finished the canal. The Washington Canal that connect to the James Creek here, and leading the boat to the city of Washington at the time, and connect to the Tiber Creek at the Potomac. So what it does is it brings goods from the Anacostia River through the city of Washington at the time and connect to the Potomac River. And in 1828, the C&O Canal that intend to connect Washington Canal to the west of the city through the Georgetown and eventually go to Ohio River, a portion of that was built. And in 1832, two of those canal connected. And where is connected at this spot is here. It is, right now we call that 17th Street Wharf. It is, at the time, it was the largest wharf in the city of Washington. So it's bring a lot of boat and have a lot of trading business there. So the lockkeeper house is somehow, probably is here. Nobody can locate it accurately on this particular map, but we know it's at the wharf and where the two canals intersect. This 1861 map showing that the dome was adding to the Capitol. The canal, Washington Canal, is clearly illustrated here. The Washington Monument is still holding its halfway, or not even halfway, is a very short stump. And then Smithsonian was built at the time. The canal didn't work too well, and the railway comes, and goods, instead of going through the canal system, C&O Canal and the Washington Canal, they start to use railway to ship goods and everything. So the canal kind of lost its intended function. Eventually it becomes recreational water channel or waterway. At the meantime, the city is starting to increase population and activities. Canal actually, after 2 decades operation, becomes a dump. So people start to put dump garbage in there and the sewer and so on. So it's basically abandoned. The canal was abandoned. And then at some point, the canal got covered, so it's created B Street. In early 20th century, I think the date people turn to give is 1902. Army Corps cleaned the river dredge, some sediment, and filled the land between Washington Monument and Lincoln Memorial. For this piece of land was completely filled, and it becomes a large piece of reclaimed land, and we call that Potomac Park these days. So the road later on, the B Street later on, got extended all the way west, meet the river, and the street becomes Constitution Avenue. And here we see that little house, lockkeeper's house, is sit this photograph that was shot in 1911 from top of Washington Monument. This particular photograph from National Archive showing the lockkeeper's house at the corner of these two streets. And you can tell from next picture, because the road is widened over the time, by 1900, the house is sitting outside of the 17th Street edge. So this brought next move, which is in 1915. You can see the little date in this small drawing that shows how much it moved and which year. So in 1915, it was moved from this original location west and north. So it's moved 49 feet west and 6 feet north. And it's surrounded by nicely planted landscape, and their intersection and curbs is nicely situated in a straight corner. At that time, actually, the house was labeled as a watchman's locker and 2-room. So you can tell that's kind of a comfort station and storage. For the next 100 years, this structure took on a lot of different functions. Used to be a police station, public restroom, storage, bag store, and so on. A lot of functions it served. By 2010, one Park Service thinking about renovating Constitution Garden and Lawkeeper's House, you saw this condition of the house. The house really was in disrepair condition. The wood door and window frames are all rotten. A lot of them are rotten, and glass is broken. And wildlife or the domestic animals take the space, and the mortar between stones were all loose. So it's really the time for renovating this place. In addition to the structural and how the house condition itself, it's because the Constitution Avenue widened again over the time, it sits really at the edge of the Constitution Avenue, only leave a small space for pedestrian walkway to go through. There's no, because of the condition, the safety condition, and also the structure condition there, it was not opened, and there was a wayside sign here, just to simply explain what the house was and explain the history a little bit, just for the information that can contain in this one little area. You can, for people to read. And also, when people are reading this, you can tell you have a pedestrian, passing behind you, and high-speed cars also zooming through. So it's really not an ideal situation. Therefore, it is a lost opportunity for tell a rich story of this location. Not only Lawkeeper House itself, the story of canal like Washington Canal and Seoul Canal, that's the start point. Although we have a site in Georgetown that you can visit for the Lawkeeper's House and multiple Lawkeeper's House along the Seoul Canal, but this really is the place where all this Lawkeeper House, the series of Lawkeeper House started. And also have the story about the reclaimed land and close to the Washington Monument and World War II Memorial and all of that. So the key location actually provide a lot of interpretation and education opportunities from this site, yet we were not taking advantage of that. So if we move the house, if we repair the house, we're thinking about the function of it and how we use it. When we decide to move it, there are a few objectives. One is that the house wants to be moved far enough from the street corner, from two streets, that that is having increasing traffic, heavy traffic that vibrate the ground. Therefore, the house got vibrate and the structure got weakened. So we want to move it away from the street corner enough to avoid that. And we also want to be sure there is enough space that we can utilize to build a little bit gateway plaza that receive people as group, as individual. So we want enough space to do that. But we also don't want to move it too far. We still want this structure relate to this street intersection and relate to its original location. So this is roughly where the original lockkeeper's house was, and then the location before the 2017 move, and roughly where the lockkeeper's house is sitting today. So you can tell the first move was roughly 50 feet, and then the second move is also 50 feet diagonally. To move the house, we need to prepare that. The house, actually, based on the contractor's estimation, is weighted like 110 tons, and close, probably more than 200,000 pounds. The weight is not the problem. The structure integrity of the house as it was a problem. So be sure we can safely move it, and after move the house was still intact. We have to prepare this building. What we did before moving is we took out all the window frames, windows, doors, 2 stone chimneys. Those stone chimneys were the revision after the first move, so those were not original. So we took them down. One is easier for the house to be moved, and another is we will build the original chimney with brick material anyways. So the roof also was taken down because we will put a new roof. The old roof was not working anymore, and all the weakened mortar joints of those stones. If you see this lighter color of mortars, they were redone, so they are holding the stones, exterior wall stones together. Be sure when we move them, all the pieces go along together. So it's pretty much in this, and then we put CMU blocks in those spaces, so it support the exterior doors laterally. So it's keeping the house as an integrated structure. This is the starting of the foundation. The first move actually was done a little bit simpler. They didn't build a concrete foundation. What they did is they cut the house at the pre-existing elevation and then buried some of the stone walls, and moved and buried some stone walls. So the house was shortened from original height. And the foundation was not that strong. That's why it's causing shaking and losing the building. The second move, we had a plan to do we did a basement. So it's a deep concrete footing with a room basement underneath to contain all the equipment. And then the house was cut also at the level of 1817 level and moved to this location. So this is a photograph showing the start of the excavation, the sheeting process. And you can see the basement. This is the basement we're building in. Now all the concrete walls were built and all come to the level that the house will sitting in. And Wharf House and Building Moving Company is the contractor. The general contractor is Hansel Phelps. They are really specialized on moving houses and building. They moved a lot of structures. A lot of them are larger than this one. What they did is they start with taking pieces of stones from exterior wall. The decision is we cut the building at this level, so the stones were removed at certain interval, and then the steel beams. This is the starting of. This is the first two beams they inserted into this building. Eventually, they would have a large or small combination of system of steel beam to be put underneath this house. And then they use jets. Those some of them are hydraulic, some just a hand, like how we when we change the car wheel, those type of jets, more powerful. They use jets to raise the building, and they use the box cribs like those to stack together. So the raising of the house is sort of in a small couple of inches increment. So they raise a little bit and put the box crib underneath and gradually raise it to the height that they can put the dollies underneath. So these are dollies. There are 4 of them, like one at each corner. And before they move, they put marks on the foundation corner. Therefore, they know where the house has to move and has to land. The move actually, the building, in the entire duration of the moving, the building didn't change the orientation. It were those wheels that making turns, so the building always sitting on this steel beam system and in this position. The entire move actually, if you count, probably take a little bit more than 2 hours. They first move south for 30-some feet, very slowly, and then this photograph shows the wheels make turns, and then they move to the west. It took them a long time, I think probably more than 30 minutes to check and measure and adjusting to be sure that the corner of the house will land at those 4 corners. I have a little bit small YouTube video that was done by the mover. It shows us hold on. So you see the series of steel beams. floor and ground floor at this point. So that actually, in a short period of time, it show you the entire moving. A lot of people actually in this room watched that move. We stand there for 2 hours to watch the entire thing. So when they land the house, they reverse the step. They lower the house down gradually and take out the box cribs and use the jets. And then one thing is different is when they land the house, they build the interior wall first. So the house at this point was supported, you can see, at the corner by CMU blocks temporarily and some jets. This is the time that they are building the interior wall. And then the house then was supported on the interior wall. They then take out all the jets and put the exterior wall back. The moving was happened in October 13th, 2017. So it took, you can tell, we started December 16 and this was moved in October 17th. And then the house needed to be fixed in the cold weather, going through the winter, November, December, until March in next spring. And a lot of work are masonry work. They are very sensitive to the exterior temperature. Therefore, the general contractor built like a tent structure. In the tent structure, there are scaffoldings and there are kitewalks, probably 3 layers of kitewalks around the house. And the inside of the tent is heated. Therefore, is good to for all the material to be put in. So this is the inside of the tent. You can see the roof is ongoing. So renovated house had a lot of traditional and material, like the original material. The chimneys are brick and the wood, shingle, copper, flashing at the corner, and so on. They actually, the colors of those materials are not matching what we saw before we demolished the building or treated the building for moving. But they are authentic, original material, original type of material. It's just that they are going to be weathered eventually to older look. Now we just have to enjoy this coloration, which is vivid and look new and pretty nice.
So it was originally copper flashing?
I believe so. Flashing, only at the corners.
And when you did the brick, is that new brick or did you actually purchase antique brick for that?
Antique brick. They're not old one. There were some old bricks that took down from the fireplace and so on, but contractor deemed they are not structurally sound to be reused. So they ordered some.
And when you used antique brick, did you then order old antique mortar to go with it?
The mortar were actually the architect actually studied in the lab. They studied the content of the old mortar, and they make a formula of the new mortar close to the original one, including the color of the mortar. They believe right now you see them very light color. In one is half done, you can see the different color between the new mortar and the old one. Yet the architect believe the lighter color were the original color. It's just a weathered change to a darker one. So you can tell when the so this is a kind of a detailed shot for all the layers we put in on the roof to do the waterproofing. It's really using traditional material, yet the most current techniques and for the roof waterproofing, including like the drainage layers, the sheet waterproofing, and the flashing here. And this one showing one way inspect the mortar pointing to the existing stone walls. And the interior material is all very simple. The polished concrete floor and similar finish. I would say almost the same finish in the interior, which is original. The second story's floor was taken out to increase the height of the interior room, and some of the joists that support the floor in the second story were repaired. And the carpentry work is very well done, and the carpenters spend a lot of time doing nice details. This shows how the old joists connect with a piece of new wood, and the connections are actually recorded in a lot of Japanese wood repair books, showing this is kind of a traditional technique. And carpenter also spent a lot of time to fit the wood frame to this like irregular stone profile. Spent a lot of time on those details. And the basement is really is nicest basement I've seen. With a lot of HVAC system that has geothermal system in there, and irrigation panel, electric panel, alarm, and everything connect the utility connect from the city to here, and then serve the house. And now we have this before and after shot. Before you can hardly find a place to stand to read the wayside signs, and now if you're in a car, you have a very comfortable distance to see the entire Lockkeeper house. And if you are on the ground, either on wheels or on foot, you feel comfortable, you have enough space, you're not hitting other people. And if you want to meet your friend in the area, you can simply say meet at the Lockkeeper house plaza. You can easily, it's a place that not too large, you get lost, not too small, you cannot contain group. So you can see it's have this like a 10 people group, kind of feels like intimate under the tree and fitted with within the plaza. We had a soft opening last week over the Labor Day weekend, and it will open. The grand opening ceremony would be in September 13th. It should be next Thursday. Okay, a little bit Constitution Garden, because we say the Lockkeeper House is the first phase of the Constitution Garden improvement. So the Constitution Garden, this is before Constitution Garden. This was demolished 1970, and Constitution Garden was built 76. That was designed by Dan Kelly. I think he is the most elegant landscape architect in our time.
Most what architect in our time?
Elegant.
Elegant. So arrogant.
Yeah, those architects, landscape architects, at times are arrogant, but I can say that because I'm a landscape architect. And this is the Trust of National Mall organized a competition. Have three sites, gateway sites. One is the Constitution Garden, one is Sylvan Theater, one is Union Square. This competition was won by Peter Walker Partners. He is also a famous landscape architect. And so this is a vision for the Constitution Garden improvement. The lake will pretty much keep its shape, have a sort of a controlled water feature. You can call that a small pond or a pool that can have a motor sailboat or controlled sailboat in there, and ice skating in the winter. The pool is the lake is naturalized with a lot of plants that doing the water filtration, cleaning, and there will be a pavilion that contains a lot of program in there. And the lake itself would become a water treatment infrastructure. The surrounding landscape will have perforated pavement and a lot of planting area. That water simply will percolate through and be collected in the so-called sand drainage layer and some filtration layer, and then go to the pond and be pumped back to the planting bed to do the irrigation. And the pavilion has a lot of programs, including the exhibition and restaurant, cafe, movable tables and chairs, umbrellas. And in the evening, it can have event for ice skating. And on the side, there is an amphitheater, can hold a lot of events there. So those are the kind of the future vision of the Lawkeeper House and Constitution Garden area. The opening, the soft opening last week, proven to be very successful, and we can see the opportunity of this site starting to be realized. A lot of people are so interesting about the canal story, about the reclaimed land story, even the story of the 17th Street levee, which controls the flood north of the mall. So this place really becomes a gateway that linked White House visitors and the Vietnam Veteran Memorial and World War II, all these larger tourist attraction sites. So as I said, grand opening next Thursday. So hopefully everybody will, if you're interested, you can go there. Yes. Thank you for today we have a lot of Park Service people here. I really want to thank you for your support, and actually I'm doing a lot of this with my colleague Rosemary, Sean, and Jeff. They're all here today. Thank you.